Tokyo's central business district, a temple to the Japanese work ethic. A stone's throw away is a staircase that leads up to the Atago Shrine. Many working professionals in the city climb these stairs known as the steps to success at least once in their working life. To the Japanese, they symbolize climbing the corporate ladder. But even getting to the work gods is hard work in Japan.
結構すごい階段ですよね。
はい。まあでもいい運動になりますし、ステップバイステップでいろんなことが願いが叶う祈りながら登ってきました。
Worshippers here primarily pray for anything related to their careers. From new jobs and promotions to booming business ventures. The number of salarymen who trek here daily to beseech the business gods is a glimpse into just how obsessed the Japanese are with work. Japan's workforce puts in some of the longest hours in the world, clocking in close to 1,700 working hours per person per year, compared to 1,500 in the UK and 1,300 in Germany. But ironically, Japan is among the least productive global economies today. I'm Yumi Araki. I left Japan as a teenager, and now I'm back as a journalist to explore my country as it enters a new era. In this episode, I want to understand why the Japanese work so hard. As the country grapples with the impact of COVID-19 and ever greater economic pressures, I explore if this unbending dedication to work
ずっと仕事しなければいけない。
still has a place in the hearts and minds of the Japanese today.
泣いてみると結構好きですよ。
Enduring rush hour in Tokyo is just one example of how committed the Japanese are to work. But the dedication to work in my country also manifests in other, often extraordinary ways. From the efficiency of our trains, to how our restaurants are run, down to the tiniest details in a shop window. Everyday mundane objects can take mythical forms here in Japan. Even fruit. And if anything embodies the Japanese work ethic, it is this melon.
Wow, priced at 32,400 yen, which is about 330 to 350 US dollars.
Some have even been auctioned for a whopping 45,000 US dollars. These incredibly expensive melons are considered the pinnacle of perfection in Japan. But what makes a perfect melon? I'm heading 180 kilometers southwest of Tokyo to Shizuoka Prefecture to find out. Master farmer Yu Koyagi grows the most revered of all of Japan's couture crops, the crown melon, venerated for its taste and its aesthetics.
人間と一緒で第一印象は見た目から。
他の国ではこういう果物のなんて言うんでしょう、果物に向けての愛情っていうのはあまりないので、日本人はなんでこんなにこだわるんでしょうね。
なんででしょうね。でもやっぱり面白いですよね。面白いと本当にもうこればっかになっちゃうもの。見てたくなっちゃうし、手をかけたくなっちゃうし。
42-year-old Yagi-san is a second-generation muskmelon farmer. She learned how to grow melons from her father, who passed away 3 years ago.
今は自分がハマっているから頑張るし。
To understand the hard work that goes into producing Japan's crown melons, I'm joining Yagi-san as she tends to her crops. Here, timing is everything.
私ねストップウォッチを持って普通の生産者さんたちがやるわけじゃないんですけど、もともと父がこう私と一緒にやってた時に1分20秒の水って言われてかけてたんです。こうパッて見たら今日1分ぐらいかなとか。
After 50 days of precision watering, the plants begin to flower.
わあ、すごいですね。ここが実がもうなってるところですね。
赤ちゃんですね。
But the hard work of raising them has only just begun. Yagi-san sees the melons as her children, all individually beautiful. To me, they all look pretty much the same.
でもよく見ると、あっちの方がちっちゃくって。
And just like many an overdoting mother, there is no end to her nitpicking.
もっと大きくしなきゃいけないです。あそこに見えてるのはもう傷ですよ。わかります？これあざなので。傷ですよ。
なんかキリがつかないですよね。
そうなんです。
Yagi-san's eye for detail, mixed with a certain obsession, is quintessential of the Japanese work ethic. It's to achieve the best. And in Yagi-san's case, it's to produce the perfect melon. One of the most important features farmers look out for is a melon's webbing.
こうやって見ても縦に強く出てるのもあれば、こうなんとなくもっと細やかに出てる子とか、表情はいろいろあるんです。でこういうのをなるべく品質を揃えて管理ができるのは腕がいい。
When you sort of walk through the process of how this is done and the amount of care and love that Yagi-san puts into the product, I mean, it's sort of hard to dispute how much of a love of labor this is, and maybe it is, worth the $200+ that it costs to buy these things.
After 100 days of TLC, these melons are ready for harvest. But not all of them appear to live up to Yagi-san's exacting standards.
割れてるの。
いやでも本当にこう見ないと見れないですよね。
そうみんな皆さんが思う割れはもうパカって割れたのが割れだけど、生産者でいう割れはこういう割れ。
なるほど。
Only 1 in 1,000 melons are considered top grade and displayed at the markets not just as food, but as edible works of art. Back in the farmhouse, I finally get to try Yagi-san's famous crown melons.
わあ素晴らしい。All right. Try it.
美味しい。
うわ美味しい。甘いですね。こんなに味が違うんだ。Usually when you have cantaloupe or other melon, it's like it's fine, it's just a fruit. This is like top notch, really sweet, really luscious.
In just 4 years of farming, Yagi-san has won awards for her fruit for 2 consecutive years.
父が亡くなった年の春作の品評会で私入賞したんです。もう2ヶ月ぐらい父が生きてれば入賞が見られたかもしれない。
でも天国から見てたんじゃないんでしょうかね。いや本当これ食べたことない甘さです。あ
りがとうございます。よかった。よかった食べれて。
In Japan, there's a word for the kind of care Yagi-san puts into her work. Kodawari, the relentless and uncompromising pursuit of perfection.
In my mind, the word kodawari used to have a negative connotation. So someone who can't see the forest from the trees, they're so into what they do, that's all they can see. With Yagi-san and her crown melons, it gave a new meaning to me for what kodawari means. There's a phrase that Japanese people always say when people eat something really delicious. They're saying, "愛情がこもってますね," which means, oh, there's so much love imbued into this. And I never really, in the past, have eaten anything that literally felt that way until I had this melon.
Kodawari permeates almost everything in Japanese life, from food to design and even business. On average, employees here work more than 49 hours a week. That's 6 days cramped into 5. But such unbending commitment to work comes at a cost. There's been a growing and disturbing phenomenon in the country that the Japanese call karoshi, death by overwork. To understand what it is about Japan's work culture that drives over 200 employees to their deaths every year, I've signed up to experience the worst place you could ever choose to work in Japan. Japan's renowned work ethic turned post-war debris into a first-world economy. But by the 1990s, this economic giant was in a financial bubble. The bubble popped and growth shriveled from a high of around 7% down to 1%. 3 decades later, the country can't seem to get itself back on track. But the Japanese are working as hard as ever. A quarter of full-time employees work more than 80 hours overtime a month. The result has been karoshi, or death from overwork. And a key driver of it are exploitative sweatshop-style corporations called black companies. My director, producer, and I have signed up for an event that lets people experience firsthand what working at a black company is like. These actors are playing managers and employees who are going to simulate scenes based on real situations at black companies. Although names have been changed.
我がスーパーミラクルハッピーね、我が社こういう経営理念を掲げています。いいですか？みんな全員一斉に斉唱したいと思います。よろしいですか？はい、いきますよ。はい、いきます。せーの、一つ、私たちは正しい経済発展に努めます。一つ、私たちは正しい経済発展に努めます。やる気あんのかよ。な？もっと大きい声出して。はい、私たちは会社員の幸福を、全社員の幸福を目指します。一つ、私たちは全社員の幸福を目指します。スーパーミラクルハッピー。はい。スーパーミラクルハッピー。
It may look odd, but company slogans have long been a Japanese tradition to boost morale and bind employees to a company's culture. At some firms, morning rituals include group exercises and singing songs about productivity and defeating rival businesses. At black companies, anyone out of step is made to suffer.
よそ見すんなよ。あ、どの番一人だ。はい、下がって。どの番一人で。はい。みんなでスーパーミラクルハッピーをちゃんと届けるんだよ。せーの。スーパーミラクルハッピー。はい、ハッピー。どの番よく頑張った。はい、頑張ったね。
In the next scene, an actor playing a new recruit is being trained to sell the company's products. In this case, medical equipment, door to door.
売るところやってみよう。ね。はい。彼女がね、その売る相手おばあちゃんとかおじいちゃんとかね。
ピンポン。はい。
はい。
訪問販売でやってまいりました。スーパーミラクルハッピー社の前川です。
健康売ってんだからもっと大きい声やらないと。はい。元気よくやらないとな。はい。健康売るしたんだよ。おかしいやつだ。
It seems a bit over the top, but these scenarios are based on true stories. At black companies, training sessions like these typically turn into a hazing session.
あ 今回、健康器具を売ってまして、
目見て喋れよ、
はい
ちゃんとな、ちゃんと、
はい
元気がないんだよ。
はい、
そんなやつこれ物買うか？おかしいだろ。
買いません。
I know this is play acting, but it's incredibly uncomfortable to watch.
バカ野郎、どう思うんだお前。おい、ちゃんとやれよ。何も思わないのか？おかしいだろ。ちょっとおかしいだろ。はい、ちょっとコミュニケーション全然取れないんだわな。ちゃんと声出してな、罵倒して罵倒な、バカ野郎って言ってあげる。
バカ野郎。
あ、違う、こいつは俺見るんじゃ、こいつってバカ野郎って殴って。大丈夫大丈夫大丈夫、こいつのためなんだから。ほら、あ、言ってほら。バカ野郎。
The lines between reality and fiction are getting pretty blurred for me.
やばいっす。
やばくないほら、言ったれほら。
バカ野郎。
ほらちゃんとな、俺感情オープンしてよな。ありがとうございます。ね、ほら言ったよお前な。
ありがとうございます。
はい、みんなせーの、はい、スーパーミラクルハッピーね、これ。
Oh my god. What's horrible about that scenario is like they make a hostage out of the person that they're trying to make an example of.
Yeah.
And so it creates a scenario where it's like, no, you can't step in, because if you step in, that's going to be you.
It compels them even more to fall in line because you're watching it being like, oh God, I'll do anything to make sure that that's not me.
Right, exactly.
That's definitely a divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that they won't form solidarity against the company and say.
That's right. That's exactly right.
While specifics vary, Black companies tend to hire younger employees who end up working over 80 hours overtime a month. They only get a 10-minute break a day, and they don't receive any insurance, benefits, or pensions. Employees are invited to participate in these Black company simulations to raise awareness about their rights as workers.
なぜそうなんて言うんでしょう、我慢強いんでしょうかね。私だったら本当にもう1日2日でこんなだったらもうやめてしまうっていう感覚があると思うんですけれども、
ブラック企業が生まれるのは日本人特有のメンタリティのせいだっていうのはやっぱ大きくあると思うんですよね。
Masayama-san believes this mentality stems from a code of ethics developed by the Japanese samurai in the 17th century called Bushido, or the way of the warrior.
特に江戸時代から始まる武士道っていうのは主君のために命を捧げなければならないっていう考え方には日本には例えば武士道とは死ぬことと見つけたりみたいな感じでもう全てを捧げるものであるっていうことが日本人のやっぱ根本にあっておそらくそれが戦争でも使われていて。
With Japan's economy facing its worst crisis since World War II, it seems work has become the be-all and end-all for many people.
やっぱり日本の人々っていうのは会社に所属してるっていうことこそが自分のアイデンティティであるっていうことが多分強くあるんじゃないかなって。だからそれは自分のそのこう魂というか全て。
The relationship between employer and employee in Japan has traditionally been for life. Since the 1950s, Japanese businesses have hired recruits fresh out of school, trained them on the job, and kept them until retirement, all in exchange for an employee's lifetime devotion to the company.
やっぱりこうブラック企業とかのちょっとこう悪知恵が働く人たちはそういう日本人のマインドをちょっとうまく使ってるっていうふうに思いますね。
Black companies in Japan have become so common, there is now an annual ceremony that gives an award to the most evil corporation of the year. Previous nominations include local firms, Fortune 500 companies, and even public broadcasters. At the risk of being labeled as one, our director calls it a wrap.
Cool. Okay, cool. Thank you.
In 2018, there were over 2,000 work-related suicides across a range of industries in Japan. I'm I'm speaking to 41-year-old Fumiyoshi Shimizu, who has personally experienced how overwork can severely affect mental health. 14 years ago, Shimizu-san was one of the 800,000 workers employed at convenience store chains across Japan.
24時間営業365日開いてますっていう、そういう会社でずっと仕事しなければいけないと。
Because of punishing schedules and general labor shortages across Japan, 24-hour stores are difficult to staff.
突然学生の方がね、今日は出勤できませんと、病気だとかね、いろいろな都合で来れないですってなると、そのままレジから出られなくて、朝から夕方、夕方から夜まで。で、深夜の子が来れなければ深夜から早朝まで働いてという。
Shimizu-san tells me his company refused to offer him support.
私が働く以外の方法はない。4日間で80時間勤務した。自分の持ってるエネルギーを全部燃やしてしまって。
Shimizu-san's dedication to his job reminds me of a pervasive Japanese phrase, "Gambaru," or to persevere through hardship. But persevering on just 3 hours of sleep a day puts the body and the brain under enormous stress. A year into the job, Shimizu-san was diagnosed with depression, but he ignored his doctor's advice to take a break.
こう会社全体に人がいない状態で、自分が今抜けたらこのお店誰が受け持つのか、そこから2、3週間は働いてたんですけれども、今度はお医者さんが激怒しまして、それじゃダメだと。
For better or for worse, there is a deeply ingrained mentality in Japanese society that the group comes before the needs of the individual.
で、非常に悩んだんですけど、やっぱりお医者さんの言う通りに会社に報告して、で、それからは休みが取れるように、っていうか完全に休むように、なったんですが。
Because Shimizu-san was put on unpaid leave, he asked the company to compensate him for his overtime hours.
24時間働いてもですね、4日で80時間働いても、それ残業代は発生しないという会社の主張だったので、初めて話し合いの場で会社の本質が見えてきた。
Shimizu-san took the company to court
迎えてください。
and won.
清水君が声を上げた。これは私たちの無理だというふうに思います。
Shimizu-san was awarded $15,000 in compensation for his overtime hours and for the damage the work had done to his health. A rare outcome in Japan.
で、私も健康を取り戻して、今の同じ会社に復職して勤務しているという状況ですね。
それはなぜでしょう。同じ会社に戻るという。
うちの会社はまず普通の会社になったと、思いますね。もう一つ理由があって、またキャリアを積み重ねようというモチベーションのようなものがまだ完全にないので。
The relationship between employee and employer in Japan reminds me of an abusive relationship where the victim keeps coming back to an abuser. A sort of lethal corporate devotion and reliance that has subsumed every other relationship in a salary person's life. I want to find out how leaders at the highest levels are tackling the epidemic of stressed and overworked employees.
泣くことが睡眠や運動、笑いよりもストレス解消に効果的だということが、この10年、15年の脳科学の研究で分かってきました。
Japan's government recognizes that the country's work culture needs to change.
ワークライフバランスを確保し、誰もが働きやすい環境を整えてまいります。
In 2018, the government passed a work-style reform bill that introduced mandatory off days and caps on excessive working hours. Yet critics point out that caps can be extended for half a year during busy periods. back up to 100 hours of overtime a month. But there has been some change. To encourage a healthier work-life balance, some companies have introduced automated computer shutdowns at the end of the day, shaming workaholics with capes, and afternoon exercise breaks to help employees de-stress. I've heard of one particularly unique initiative that claims to ease the pressures of work. These salarymen have been sent here by their company for a form of therapy called 涙活。
涙活とは2、3分だけでも能動的に涙を流すことによって心のデトックスを図る活動。泣くことが睡眠や運動、笑いよりもストレス解消に効果的だということがこの10年、15年の脳科学の研究で分かってきました。今日はね、そんな涙活を皆さんにね体験してもらいたいと思っております。
Yoshida-san has a tough task ahead. According to an international survey on adult crying, the Japanese are among the least likely of all nationalities to shed a tear.
その泣いた出来事を思い返してほしいんですけども、昨日泣いたって方いらっしゃいます？泣いてない。はい。じゃあ1週間以内泣いたって方。で泣いてない。最後に泣いたいつか。
いや記憶にないです。
記憶にないぐらい。ああ。
泣かないっすね。
泣かないですか。はい。ありがとうございます。はい。今日ね泣いていただけたらと思います。皆さんにですね7本の映像を、約30分ぐらいですねちょっと見ていただきたいなと思っております。
In the first film, a son is telling his dying mother at the hospital that he regrets not appreciating her enough growing up. It doesn't take long for me. In the second clip, an estranged father and daughter are reconnecting at her wedding. In the last film, a man is reading a poem in memory of his cat, his lifelong companion. Man, this guy is tough.
Okay. どうでした？泣けました？
はい。あと猫が死んだのも3年前ぐらいに死んじゃった。
ああ、そうだったんですね。はい。ありがとうございました。
そうですね。私も一番最初の母の話がすごいじっくりしました。私も育ちはシングルマザーだったので、その彼女の気持ちとか、すごく出てきました。
あ、なるほど。はい。どうでした？泣けました？
ただ泣いてみると結構スッキリするなと。
But there is one participant who kept it all in.
はい。泣けなかったです。
で、もちろんね泣けないっていう人いるんですよ。人が涙を流す時ですね、その映像なり、言葉に自分の人生経験を投影して人は涙を流すんですが、歩んでいる人生皆さん違うように泣きの粒は違うんですよね。
Companies offering therapies like these are encouraging their employees to step outside the traditional confines of the stoic salaryman. It's a step towards acknowledging the individual as a human being in a society that has long favored the collective.
やっぱりすごく日本の社会は泣きにくいなと思ってて。
泣くなっていうふうに教えられてきて、うちの父親が特にそういうふうに言ってては、子供の前で泣くっていうことはすることはまずないんですけども、今日こうやって、動画を見せていただいて相反して涙が出てくるっていう、このなんですかね、この矛盾したこの行動がすごいなんか不思議な感じではありながらも、泣けてきてしまう自分がなんか不思議な感覚に陥ったと思いましたね。はい。
涙は実は一粒流しただけで1週間ストレス解消が持続するって言われてから強烈なストレス解消効果があります。
I noticed that Owada-san, who didn't cry, looked skeptical.
どういう気持ちですか？
その環境を変えない限りやっぱり変わりませんよね、きっとね、と思います。
なるほどね。その過労死が起きてるブラック企業があるってことは、その根本的になんて言うんでしょう、システム上でなんかが問題があるってことですよね。
While there's been progress at recognizing the overwork epidemic in Japan, solutions like tear therapy may only be the band-aid and not the cure for overwork in the country. But maybe there still is something to having a good cry at the end of the day.
吉田さんおっしゃったように泣くことというのが前向きになることだと。泣くことでね、例えばいやこの仕事は本当は自分は違うんじゃないか、もうちょっと人生考えてもいいんじゃないかとか、いやちょっと休んでみたいなとか。
はい、そうですね。
But if it takes this long for grown adults to find out if their jobs are the right fit, I wonder how young graduates who are about to enter the workforce feel. In Japan, the pressure to get a traditional salaried job begins early. University students spend most of their final year preparing for the one event they believe will make or break their careers. Shukatsu, or job hunting season. An intense year-long process in which thousands of students attend multiple job fairs, seminars, and interviews to secure full-time employment by the time they graduate. Roughly 80% of Japan's graduates find jobs during shukatsu, fail to get hired, and the chances of finding work after graduation are next to nil. The stakes and the stress are so high that 1 in 5 students are said to contemplate suicide. I want to understand how the shukatsu system affects the lives of young Japanese and the nation's work culture. But before I join the job hunt, I've got to dress the part. Shukatsu has strict guidelines for interview attire.
就職活動のコーナーがこちらでございます。
The first rule of shukatsu: suits must be black or navy blue.
こちらのスーツがおすすめでございます。はい。
And the color of a blouse is usually white.
見せるっていうところでいくと、やはり無難なというか、どなたに見られてもきちんとしてるなっていう感じが伝わるのが白なので、白の無地を選ばれる方が多いですかね。はい。
Women are also advised to keep makeup and accessories to a minimum. Though there is one sartorial choice that female students do get to make: to wear pants or a skirt.
そうですね。着こなしのルールというかマナー的にはちょうど膝の半分、膝頭が隠れる程度が理想とされています。理由は椅子に座った時にあまりにも短すぎるとやっぱりちょっとセクシーな印象になりすぎてしまうこともありますので、相手にどう見られるかっていうところがやっぱり大事なので、
みんなと同じような服を着ているとあんまりなんか印象に残らないですね。
はい。印象に残らないことはあると思うんですが、お話の中で自分の経験をしっかり語っていただいて自分の個性をアピールする、そういうことで個性を出していく方の方が多いとは思います。
なるほど。
はい。
I set aside my misgivings about the bland suit and try it on.
いかがでしょうか。
スカートいいですね。It's actually a pretty comfortable suit.
こちらにおかけください。
テストパスか。You know, you typically do more than one interview a week, like every day essentially. So if I have to do this every day and these are machine washable, not too bad.
But the individual in me can't help it.
やっぱり黒だとなんかちょっとつまんない気がするので、違うパターンついてるやつとかありますか？ All right, so this is the more outlandish choice because it is not black. It's blue, navy blue, way different than black. It has one button instead of two, so the chest area shows a bit more. maybe too risque on your first interview, but it's still pretty conservative suit in my opinion. Like I could walk into an interview with a financial firm and they'd take me seriously. If I walked into an interview with creatives, it'd be like, you know, you can be our accountant.
I can't say the suit's aesthetic represents who I am, but maybe that's not the point.
As I'm thinking about what distinguishes myself from somebody else, you know, in a prospective interview, it's the ideas, it's the thoughts that actually make the difference. So if you can take that sort of, oh, what am I going to wear out of the situation, maybe it is that you can actually just focus more on your responses.
With my standard suit in hand, I'm ready to find out how Japanese students prepare for the dreaded job hunt.
大手ベンチャーの違いは何かというテーマについて今からディスカッションをしてください。どうぞ。
To prepare thousands of students during shukatsu, or job hunting season in Japan, there is a billion-dollar industry that provides guidance on everything from aptitude tests and job attire to resume writing and interview etiquette. And I'm diving into this world. I've joined a workshop that teaches students how to navigate group interviews. It's a common practice Japanese companies use to whittle down prospective candidates. Consultant Yuki Kondo is giving the students tips on how to stand out in the crowd.
なので、その人が何を喋ったかだけじゃなくって、どんな風に喋ったかとか、どう伝わるかとか、どのタイミングで話したか。聞くという一見受け身の行動であったとしても、どんな風に聞いているか。こうやって聞いてるのと、こうやって聞いてるのでは違うよね。あと自分もやっぱり緊張和らいで笑顔になるし。
The class is splitting into 2 teams for a mock group interview. My group, Team A, are the prospective job candidates who have to prepare a presentation on a given topic, while Team B play the part of company recruiters, assessing how the students engage in team discussions.
大手ベンチャーの違いは何かというテーマについて今からディスカッションをしてください。どうぞ。
はい、よろしくお願いします。
まず違いについて、本当の定義というか違いについて思いついたんでお話ししたいと思います。
規模が小さいところがベンチャーかなって僕は思ってたので。
人数、従業員の人数が違う、規模が違う。
The stress around the table is palpable. Everyone wants to get a word in.
やっぱ人数が少ないだけにいろんな行動がすぐに動けるのかなっていう面では。
の違いにもつながるのかなっていう、そこがベンチャーと大手のかな。
The competition is fierce, and it's not easy to get a word in.
あと結構大手とベンチャー。
資本金額とか売上高と金額面でも違う。
1分以内で発表してください。
With only a short window of time, the students have to make every sentence count.
大手とベンチャーの違いはどういうところがあるのかなという議題、話になりまして、規模感が違うのではないかと、人と基盤と資本が違う、ベンチャーの方がチャレンジ、すごい新しいことに取り組んでいけるのかなという話し合いになりました。はい、
私から全体に対してフィードバック、気になったことをフィードバックをします。大手とベンチャーは対比するものではありません。前提としてなぜ対比させたのかだよね。要は結論としてこれ別にひっくり返してもよく。
Sometimes it pays to stay silent.
これ違いありますっていう話でもいいんだよね。
That was really stressful. And just observing the students was really, really impressive. But the thing that she's trying to encourage is thinking sort of not just academic smarts, but street smarts. How flexible are you? How analytical are you?
The stress of the job hunt doesn't end here. Just getting invited for an interview in the first place is a huge undertaking. And getting your foot in the door, it starts with a resume. I've joined Satoshi Sekiguchi, one of the students from the workshop, at his meeting with a career counselor to go over his job application. Students typically submit between 10 and 100 applications to increase their chances of getting an interview. And here in Japan, they are traditionally handwritten.
手書きの履歴書とかですと、丁寧に書いているかどうかとか、
字が汚いとか
字が綺麗に書いてあるかとか。
でもそれってあんまり関係ないですよね、その自分の才能。
結構そもそもその書類をパッと見て、大きな企業様とか何万通も届く企業様ですと、正直全部内容見れないんですね。
まあそうですね。
In Japan, companies aren't interested in the hours you've spent getting the font and layout of your CV just right. Resumes are more or less the same format across the country. Companies believe filling all these boxes in by hand will reveal a candidate's true personality and help them find the perfect long-term match.
こうなりたいなとか、こういう働き方したいなっていうのは、関口さんの中であったりしたんですか？
なんだろうな、こうやっていて、なんかこう結局なんかでこうで僕がなんかこう例えば社会を良くするためにはってなんかあんまりよく分かんなくて、なんだまあでもなんかずっとなんかあんまり明確な答えを出して生きてないんだなとは思いましたね。常に、自分のことを考えるのが苦手というか。
Satoshi is not alone. A common concern among students is having no idea what kind of job or company would suit them.
多分自分と向き合うっていうところが、一番ちょっと自分の中で、苦痛になってしまったりだとか、なんかモチベーションとしては下がってしまうところはあるとは思うんですけれども、逆に言うとどの自分を出したら一番自分で楽しいんだろうとか、じゃあその時の自分でいられるような会社を選んだら楽しく働けるんじゃないかなっていうふうには思うので。
Though lifetime employment is on the wane, the average Japanese worker will remain at the same company for 10 years or longer. To me, committing to a long-term relationship at such a young age feels like being pressured to marry someone you haven't even met.
関口さんみたいに、ちょっといろんなものを試してみて、これがいいんじゃないのかなって言って、その先こう道を狭くするというか、これに専念するっていうパターンの方が多いと思うので、どうなんでしょう、就活システムっていうのは。
今すぐに変わるかは正直変わらないんじゃないのかな。時代の変化でだいぶ変わってきている中で、やっぱ変えていかなきゃいけない部分でもありますし。
Many say a revamp in the shūkatsu system is long overdue.
The shūkatsu system, in a way, feels like it requires a lot out of people to know exactly what they want, and the stakes are really, really high, and that's why I think people are really, really stressed out. You know, I have to imagine that there are many people who just go through the motions and go work for a place without really having to think about, is this where I want to be? Is this where I'm best suited?
I'm curious to know what happens to people when they opt out of Japan's rigid employment system. I'm meeting 39-year-old former architect Kashiwa Hang, who quit his job when he was hospitalized from overwork 4 years ago. He's been playing the handpan ever since.
But それから離れよう、もういいやっていう人って結構度胸が必要だと思うんですけど。
そうですね。本当はそういうしたい風にしたいけど、そうすると社会的な立場のポジションだったり失ってしまったりとか。
These days, Kashiwa earns a modest income from performing and teaching the handpan.
もう全部自由、毎日が自由なんで、全部自分で決めれるし、行きたいところに行けばいいし。
His way of thinking is rare in Japan. Only 17% of Japan's labor force is self-employed like Kashiwa, compared to 25% in South Korea and 35% in the US.
なぜ日本人は、真野さんみたいのケースはあんまり少ないと思うんですよね。レアだと思うんですけど、それはなぜだと思いますか？
安定した職業ではないので、どちらかというとその不安の方が大きい多分職業だと思うんですけど、 でもすごい自分の気持ちに正直に生きていられる。本当は夜遅くまで働きたくないけど上司に言われたから働きますとか、会社だからみんな遅くまで働いてるから自分もやらないといけないとか、そういうのがあったんですけど、でも本当の気持ちはそうじゃないじゃないですか。どちらかというと自分の心にちょっと素直になろうと。
過去の人生 VS の人生、どう比べますか？
サラリーマンの時はやっぱり収入はすごい安定してるけども幸福度はやっぱりすごい低かったですね。でも今は収入はすごい不安定です。そんなに多くない。でも幸福度はやっぱり高い。そこが大きな違いですね。収入と幸福度、そのバランスがやっぱり両方ともいい方がいいじゃないですか。
そうですよね、理想的に。
Kashiwa has invited me to join him at his workplace on the busy sidewalks of downtown Tokyo. Unlike his old office, the work environment here is friendly, relaxed, and engaging. And Kashiwa can call it a day whenever he feels like it.
I think Kashiwa Hang is among the growing number of people who are of working age in Japan who are starting to get tired of sort of the traditional cultural routes of going to work. I think there's a lot more introspection about who am I outside of being a worker, and what are the possibilities that are out there.
For so long, working hard has been synonymous with what it means to be Japanese. I've seen some of the best of that work ethic, and also some of the worst.
I think Japan is at a precipice point where it's trying to preserve the traditions of how things used to be done with new paths that are being forged about how to go about work life.
As the country charts choppy economic waters in the future, the nature of work will change. And Japanese society's relationship to it will also have to change tack.